The humanitarian crisis in Fallujah. Aid workers claim the situation inside Fallujah is catastrophic. As many as 1,000 people may have died. Also, sacked, Boris Johnson relegated from the Tory front bench. Memorial service, Prime Minister joins the tributes to Ken Bigley. Arsenal beat North London rivals Spurs in a 9-goal thriller. And Captain Fantastic, Robinson stars as England crush Canada. Hello, good evening. Simply catastrophic. That's how aid workers have described conditions in the Iraqi city of Fallujah. After days of bombardment by US forces, hundreds are believed to be dead, and those who remain are in desperate need of help. But now the first convoy of aid has been delivered, an operation fraught with risk. Mark Webster has the latest.
Relentlessly crushing all opposition, the Americans say they now control most of this shattered city, but will press home their assault.
Keep the heat on them. Well, sir. Keep the warriors pumped.
Despite the sensitivity of fighting in and around the city's dozens of mosques, the Americans insist they found caches of arms and ammunition in nearly every one. And President Bush made it clear there'll be no let-up.
The terrorists will be defeated, Iraq will be free, and the world will be more secure. Our commitment to the success of democracy in Iraq is unshakable, and we will prevail.
Though most of Fallujah's population left before the assault began, aid agencies have warned that for those left behind, conditions are appalling. There is no water or electricity, and there's a threat of disease from the bodies still lying on the streets.
It is a disaster inside Fallujah. It is very serious condition. The people, there are 150 families left inside Fallujah. They need our help.
This aid convoy has now reached the main hospital in Fallujah, but until the Americans are in complete control, it's unlikely enough aid will get through to meet the urgent humanitarian needs. And tonight on the outskirts, ambulances are standing by to clear the mounting number of civilian casualties. The American determination to crush all rebel resistance has caused a humanitarian crisis in Fallujah. And since many of the insurgents fled before the fighting started, it's feared it will simply spread, so other cities will face the same fate. Mark Webster, ITV News.
Shadow Arts Minister Boris Johnson has been sacked from the Conservative front bench. The outspoken Tory MP and journalist made headlines recently following the murder of Ken Bigley for suggesting Liverpudlians could be hooked on grief in the magazine he edits. A spokesman for Tory leader Michael Howard said the decision follows fresh allegations in tomorrow morning's newspapers about an affair Mr Johnson had with a colleague. The married father of 4 vowed to continue working to promote the party's arts policies and to serve his constituents in Henley. America's Vice President Dick Cheney has been discharged from hospital following a health scare earlier this evening. The 63-year-old, recently re-elected along with President George Bush, was taken to hospital after complaining of a shortness of breath. Mr Cheney has a history of heart trouble, having had 4 heart attacks. But a White House spokesman said his shortness in breath may be related to a bad cold. After a series of tests, he left hospital, saying he feels fine. Here, the human cost of the Iraq conflict was remembered at a memorial service for the murdered hostage Ken Bigley. The Prime Minister joined Mr Bigley's family, including his wife and mother, at Liverpool Cathedral. Ken's brother Paul told the congregation that there could be no room for hatred, retribution or greed. Emma Murphy reports.
For Sombat Bigley, it was a lonely journey from her home in Thailand to Liverpool to bid farewell to her murdered husband. With her, his family and his mother Lil, she managed to smile and a wave despite her grief. For Tony Blair, fresh from talks with George Bush on the Middle East peace plan, a time to see firsthand the human consequence of conflict. Invited to read from the Corinthians by Mr Bigley's family.
Now these 3 remain: faith, hope and love. But the greatest of these is love.
That love was demonstrated by Mr. Bigley's 10-year-old niece Hannah performing her own tribute. From her father came a plea for greater understanding in a world riven by conflict.
There's no room in our complicated lives for hatred, retribution or greed.
From Paul Bigley, who was so outspoken during the campaign to free Kenneth, a glimpse of the family's pain.
Life without our Ken will never be the same again. God bless you, Ken, until we meet again.
Having fought so hard for his life and now having remembered his spirit, the challenge for the Bigley family is to rebuild their own lives in the face of their loss.
An army of lifestyle gurus could soon be operating on the NHS following plans to make personal trainers free to all patients. The guidelines to be presented to government next week are aimed at improving the nation's health and would cover everything from diet and exercise to sex. Our political correspondent Angus Walker reports.
Enjoy yourself this weekend. Have a smoke, have a drink or two, have a fry-up for breakfast, because next week we'll all be encouraged to give it up. In a key policy document published in a few days, the government will try to make us all healthier, even offering personal trainers on the NHS. You won't have to go to the gym, your GP could put you in touch with an experienced fitness instructor.
Well, there are already services out there for people. There is a GP referral scheme that's already in place, but in addition to that now we can offer lifestyle advice, exercises in the home so they don't feel they have to come to the gym, and advice on nutrition and giving up smoking, and other health issues that perhaps aren't covered by these GP referral schemes at the moment.
The Health Secretary John Reid will announce the NHS fitness scheme next week.
People know that I have long believed that the sort of benefits and information and assistance that's available to the well-off should be extended to everyone in this country through the NHS.
But can the health service afford the cost of thousands of personal trainers?
There are things that we know work, which the NHS as yet can't afford and can't provide. So let's provide those and then move on to what the evidence tells us works in terms of preventative medicine, including fitness training.
And the government says more people keeping fit means fewer patients in the hospitals, saving the NHS billions. But ministers say they're not trying to force people into the gym, they're just trying to make the sort of healthy lifestyle that only money can buy free for all. Angus Walker, ITV News, Central London.
British soldiers seeking recognition of Gulf War syndrome have received a boost. A report in the US linked the condition to exposure to toxic gases, including nerve gas. The report by the Veterans Affairs Department in Washington goes against the MOD's advice here. Gary Cottrell has the details.
Research in America is giving hope to first Iraq War veterans like Tony Flint. The government here says his speech, memory and mobility problems are the result of stress. But Washington disagrees.
We can turn around and say to the government now, look, the Americans have recognised it, why don't you? We seem to follow America with everything else, so why not this?
In short, the new US report says Gulf War syndrome is real and not in the mind. Washington's Veterans Affairs Department says there's a probable link to toxins. The report reveals a large number of first Gulf War troops were exposed to a variety of potentially toxic substances, including low levels of chemical nerve agents, as well as the pills and vaccines taken to protect against those nerve agents.
Body of a triathlete.
It claims up to 30% of US veterans have been afflicted by what it calls a complex of multiple chronic symptoms over and above expected rates.
What they're saying that yes, there is a Gulf War syndrome, which follows what the Danish have said, the French have said. Well, most coalitions countries have said yes, there is a Gulf War syndrome, and this country is the only one not to recognise it.
But the US findings haven't impressed the Ministry of Defence, which merely notes the report and says it contains nothing much new. An independent British inquiry into Gulf War syndrome is due to report its findings within the next few weeks. Gary Cottrell, ITV News.
Well, some other stories making the headlines around the world now, and a Dutch mosque has been gutted by fire in the latest attack on an Islamic site since a Dutch filmmaker was killed almost 2 weeks ago. The fire in the southeastern village of Helden near the German border broke out at 6 a.m. local time when Muslims were gathered for daily prayer, but no one was injured. There have been more than 20 attacks on Muslim buildings since the filmmaker Theo van Gogh was killed by a suspected Muslim extremist on November the 2nd. Van Gogh, who was a distant relative of the famous painter, had been critical of Islam. Hundreds of foreigners are continuing to flood into Ivory Coast International Airport seeking safety from the growing violence there. 400 British troops were sent to the country to help with the evacuation of more than 200 expats. They've been flown to neighbouring Ghana after trouble flared in the West African state. And a South Korean cargo ship has run aground in northern Japan, killing 6 crew members. The 5,000-ton Marine Osaka was blown off course by strong winds and heavy seas. A man has appeared before magistrates in North London charged with the triple murder of his wife and her 2 children. London Tonight's Marcus Powell sent this report from Brent Magistrates Court.
In the aftermath of a terrible family tragedy, Veeden McEwen, a 50-year-old electrician, appeared here before Brent Magistrates accused of a triple murder. He's said to have killed his wife Beverly, who was 42, and her 2 children. Her daughter, Donna Smart, who was 15, and her 6-year-old son, Junior Odin Gordon. Donna was strangled. Mother and son were stabbed to death. Police found their bodies at their 9th floor flat in Northwick Road, Wembley, on Tuesday morning. It's said the family were killed sometime between the 4th and the 10th of November. The 4th was the last time they were all seen alive. Mr. McEwen appeared in court with his head bowed. He said nothing as the triple murder charge was read out against him. He's said to have been suffering from mental illness and had unpredictable mood swings. Magistrates said he should be remanded in custody for his own welfare. He'll appear before the Central Criminal Court at the Old Bailey on November the 22nd. Marcus Powell, London Tonight, Brent Magistrates.
Still to come tonight on the ITV News Channel, a full roundup of the Saturday sports headlines. Plus, we introduce you to a unique tortoise proving 2 heads are better than 1. All the details in just a moment.
Orange don't like to be beaten on tariffs. So if you find a selected standard tariff on the high street that you really like from one of the other major networks, then we'll match it. The Orange Value Promise. That really is another reason to be orange.
Introducing the revolutionary new coffee pod system called Senseo. Just take a Senseo coffee pod from Dow Egberts, pop it into the machine, and moments later you'll have a delicious cup of real coffee with a smooth coffee crema layer that is totally Senseo, a sensational cup of freshly brewed coffee from Dow Egberts and Philips.
The property ladder's all very well when you're on the way up. But many British homeowners have had a nasty surprise. They're the unlucky people who bought an endowment mortgage and now find their policy does not cover the original loan amount. They're facing a final shortfall with no extra money left over. But here's the good news. If you think you were missold your endowment policy, then you could be entitled to compensation. Claim to Gain offers a free helpline for all homeowners whose endowment mortgages are not on target. Claims are handled on a no-win, no-fee basis, so you've got nothing to lose. Even if you've already tried to claim compensation and failed, we could still help you. But you need to move quickly, as there may be a time limit on your right to make a claim. So don't leave it to chance. Log on to claimtogain.com and apply online, because we could win you compensation if your endowment was missold. Or simply call 0800 1977 002 and we'll send you a free information pack. Call now.
Hello. When you want a personal loan, you can just go to your bank. But why not see if it's easier, faster and cheaper to call Lombard Direct on 0800 2 15,000.
Your rate is based on your circumstances and loan amount.
Our typical rate is just 6.4% APR.
For an unsecured personal loan of up to £25,000, call Lombard Direct on 0800 215,000 or apply online at lombarddirect.com.
Worldwide holidays and flights at affordable prices from Southall Travel. We should all travel. For great holiday and flight deals to India, Dubai, Florida, Thailand, and Mauritius. Plus many more worldwide destinations. Talk to our travel advisors for impartial advice. Call 24 hours 0870 010 9000 for a cheap way to all travel.
Welcome back. Police are hunting a hit-and-run driver who left a teenage girl critically ill in hospital. Traffic officers from Norfolk and Suffolk are trying to trace the driver who left the scene of the crash on the A146 near Beccles. Here's Sasha Williams of Anglia News.
It's the main road from Beccles to Lowestoft, used by thousands every day. But today it's the scene of a police investigation after a crash here left a local teenager fighting for her life.
At about 5:20 on Thursday evening, the 19-year-old woman was driving along the road to Beccles when a car pulled out from this junction in front of her. She swerved to avoid it and hit an oncoming vehicle on the opposite side of the road.
This is how her car was left after the accident. The teenager is now in Addenbrooke's hospital with serious injuries. Her condition is described as critical. Police are determined to find out more details. Last night they were out in force, 6 crews appealing for witnesses and, perhaps most importantly, looking for the car that pulled out of the Gillingham junction. Police believe it was a blue, medium-sized hatchback with a registration number similar to G835FDO.
The information we have at present would suggest that the driver of that vehicle must know that a collision took place behind them, and therefore we would encourage them to make contact with us at the earliest opportunity.
Police had been hoping the driver would be taking the same route home last night, but as yet haven't managed to find the car. Today, their investigation continues. Sasha Williams, Anglia News on the A146 near Gillingham.
2 people have been stabbed after fighting broke out outside a nightclub in Birmingham. Police trying to find the weapon have sealed off the area. 16 people were arrested. Central News' Darren Little reports.
At 1:45 this morning, police were called to a mass brawl here in Anchor Road in Aldridge. 16 people were arrested. I'm told it could have been many more, but the police were stretched to the limit. 2 people were admitted to hospital with serious stab wounds. The disturbance started outside a nightclub in the centre of Aldridge. It stretched the police's resources to the limit. Some of those arrested had to be taken to police stations in Birmingham because there wasn't enough room for them locally.
It was very difficult for the officers to establish because they were still fighting as the police officers arrived, and our presence didn't sort of dissuade them from carrying on fighting.
An 18-year-old man is in a critical condition in Walsall Manor Hospital after being stabbed. The local nightclub is closed for the time being as detectives try to find out what started such a large street brawl. Darren Little, Central News.
A prominent member of the Scottish Parliament is wanted for questioning by police after fire broke out in a 17th century mansion in Edinburgh. Prestonfield House in the capital was evacuated in the early hours of yesterday morning after curtains in a reception room caught fire. Scotland Today's Lindsay Rayburn reports.
Mike Watson was among hundreds of politicians who gathered at Prestonfield House Hotel in Edinburgh to honour their own at the Scottish Politician of the Year Awards on Thursday evening.
The Scottish Politician of the Year 2004 is Margaret Curran.
Margaret Curran may have been crowned Scottish Politician of the Year, but it's her colleague Mike Watson, MSP, who has grabbed the headlines. The Herald newspaper has printed excerpts from CCTV footage inside the hotel, covering the 6-minute period between 2:12 and 2:18 a.m. According to the paper, the pictures show a figure stooping down close to the base of the curtain, then walking away from it as a hotel guest enters the reception area. In a later image at 2:16 a.m, flames appear to be visible on the edge of the curtain, and 2 minutes later the flames can be seen spreading up the curtain with smoke filling the room. It's now understood police investigating the fire in the 17th century mansion want to speak to the Labour peer Mike Watson. Lord Watson hasn't been seen here at his home on the south side of Glasgow. However, it is understood that he did attend a constituency surgery in Castlemilk first thing this morning. A statement issued by the Labour Party says he completely denies all allegations and is willing to cooperate with any police inquiries. Lindsay Rayburn, Scotland Today, Glasgow.
Staff at an NHS hospital in Liverpool are being trained as special constables to try to combat the rising number of violent attacks in the health service. In the first scheme of its kind, 12 employees at University Hospital Aintree will patrol the site as volunteer police officers in their spare time. Paul Cochrane of Granada News reports.
It's a shocking statistic, but one hospital employee or paramedic is abused every day by the very patients they're trying to help. There were more than 84,000 incidents of violence towards health workers nationally last year. That's a 13% rise on the previous year. Violence has become such a major problem that one hospital on Merseyside has decided to take action, launching a scheme to train its staff as police constables.
We'll be asking them to do high visibility patrolling along the corridors, in the casualty departments, in the car parks, to prevent and reassure the staff and the public and visitors that there is a presence there ready to respond to anything that they see.
The volunteers will work in their own time and have the same powers to deal with disruptive patients as any special constable. The first trainees are due to be sworn in within the next 2 weeks, ready to patrol the wards over Christmas. Other hospitals around the country are said to be watching in anticipation to see whether this new weapon in the fight to reduce attacks could have benefits for them as well.
On to the sport now, and Chelsea are back on top of the Premiership after thumping Fulham, but Arsenal remain hot on their heels. The Gunners edged out Spurs in a 9-goal thriller at White Hart Lane. Elsewhere today, there were wins for Aston Villa, Liverpool, Charlton, Southampton and Everton. In the Coca-Cola Championship, leaders Wigan have lost their second game in a row but remain top on goal difference. Paul Jewell's side were beaten 1-0 by QPR. Ipswich, Reading and Sunderland all kept up the pressure at the top of the table with wins today. Celtic have extended their lead at the top of the Scottish Premier League to 7 points. They beat Inverness Caledonian Thistle. There are also victories for Aberdeen, Dundee United and Motherwell. Great Britain's rugby league team have tonight beaten Australia for the first time in 3 years. Victory by 24 points to 12 at the JJB Stadium has earned them a place in the tournament final. Jason Robinson has marked his first match as England's rugby union skipper by running in a hat-trick of tries against Canada. As expected, England were emphatic winners at Twickenham. They beat Canada by 70 points to 0. Ireland recorded an impressive victory over South Africa, and Scotland crushed Japan by 100 points to 8. Now those are the top stories. Full sports roundup for you in half an hour. Well, as the old saying goes, 2 heads are better than 1, and now turtle breeder in Dorchester has the case to prove it. Meet Solomon and Sheba, the rare 2-headed tortoise who's making the news around the world. Breeder John Jones says he did a double take when the little creature popped out of his or her shell 2 months ago. He says it sometimes gets a bit tricky when Solomon and Sheba want to go in opposite directions, but his granddaughters are thrilled with their new and highly unusual pet.
It's amazing how a small thing like him or her can be really famous around the world.
I like to give them dandelions because that's their favourite food.
Some people thought it was inhuman to keep it, but no way would I ever destroy a little thing like that. You know, it's real cute, never does anybody else any harm, and it's something that keeps the children amused, and well, you name it, it's all right, I don't mind it.
We'll have the latest on all of our top stories after the break, plus counting the humanitarian cost of the war in Iraq. We'll hear from the Red Crescent Aid Agency after this short break. Stay with us.
Do your DIY projects look like you did them yourself? For a job that looks great, get it Laser Straight. Laser Straight takes DIY projects to a whole new level. Laser Straight is the leveller that combines refractive lens and laser technology to project a perfectly straight line up to 50 feet in length. You'll get professional results on any home improvement project. Laser Straight adheres to any surface, leaving your hands free to do a perfect job and leaves no marks when you're done. Get a straight line the first time when you hang borders or add that perfect touch to home decorating. DIY projects have never been easier. Just position and press. Laser Straight even sticks to tile and projects a perfectly level line on any surface. Frustrated over sloppy DIY results? Laser Straight makes it look like a professional did the job. In the bathroom, take the guesswork out of hanging a towel rail. In the dining room, set a dado rail like a master carpenter. Hang curtain rods in any room with a truly professional touch. Laser Straight lays down a level 50-foot line on any surface for any project in any room in the house. And it's the one tool a household should never be without. You'll wonder how you ever got along without it. The recommended retail price is £40, but you can get the Laser Straight for only £19.99 plus post and packing. That's a £20 saving. And here's an even better deal. When you order, we'll include the Laser Straight stud finder. A £20 value, yours free. You just pay £4.99 post and packing. It's perfect for finding the stud hidden behind the wall, so you can securely hang shelves, pictures or mirrors. That means you get the Laser Straight and the Laser Straight stud finder for the great price of only £19.99. That's a saving of £40 against the combined recommended retail price. Call 0870 301 0174. That's 0870 301 0174.
The property ladder's all very well when you're on the way up. But many British homeowners have had a nasty surprise. They're the unlucky people who bought an endowment mortgage and now find their policy does not cover the original loan amount. They're facing a final shortfall with no extra money left over. But here's the good news. If you think you were missold your endowment policy, then you could be entitled to compensation. Claim to Gain offers a free helpline for all homeowners whose endowment mortgages are not on target. Claims are handled on a no-win, no-fee basis, so you've got nothing to lose. Even if you've already tried to claim compensation and failed, we could still help you. But you need to move quickly, as there may be a time limit on your right to make a claim. So don't leave it to chance. Log on to claimtogain.com and apply online, because we could win you compensation if your endowment was missold. Or simply call 0800 1977 002 and we'll send you a free information pack. Call now.
Welcome back. Tonight's top stories on the ITV News Channel. In Iraq, the battle for Fallujah is continuing, with claims hundreds of insurgents have been killed. But there's growing concern for the city's civilians caught up in the firefight. They're facing shortages of food, medicine and water. Shadow Arts Minister Boris Johnson has been sacked from the Conservative front bench. A spokesman for the Tory leader, Michael Howard, says the decision follows fresh allegations in tomorrow's Sunday newspapers about an affair Mr Johnson had with a colleague. And friends and family of the murdered hostage Ken Bigley have gathered in Liverpool for a special remembrance service. Tony Blair was among those attending. So, US forces say they now have more than 80% of Fallujah under their control, but the enemy has apparently started to try new tactics. CNN's Nick Robertson is in Fallujah with the latest.
I'm with Marines very close to the centre of Fallujah at this time. They say that what the insurgents are doing, which is melting away in the early days of this offensive, where the Marines made their strategic gains, the gains they intended to make, made them quite quickly. They said they expected the insurgents to melt away and then come back and fight in small groups, and that's what they are seeing. But from what we can see here this morning, there are aircraft flying air cover overhead, fighter aircraft flying air cover. There are detonations going on around the city, but mostly those detonations we can hear are Marines going house to house in this area looking for insurgents. What they have to do in the areas under their control is go through each house, clear out each house. What we haven't heard this morning are exchanges of gunfire or intense exchanges of gunfire. Indeed, this company of Marines that we're with say in the last several hours at least, they haven't had any contacts with insurgents. 24 hours ago, a company of Marines close to this location were involved in quite an intense firefight. There were casualties, but this particular company and that company so far today not having any contacts with insurgents. The picture from here is that there are groups of insurgents out there. There are small numbers, but the intensity of the fights that have been going on are beginning to drop off. Certainly the Marines here not dropping their guard, certainly knowing that those groups of insurgents could be in any of the buildings that they go to. But at this time, the aircraft here flying air cover, not dropping bombs. A few artillery rounds we could hear being fired into the city to support the house-to-house searches. But most of the detonations you hear around the city, sporadic detonations as Marines and other troops go in those house-to-house searches, knocking down doors looking for insurgents.
Well, the Iraqi Red Crescent aid agency entered Fallujah this afternoon. They say conditions there are terrible. After 5 days of heavy bombardment by US forces, many people are without food or water. Well, earlier, Owen Thomas spoke to the agency's spokeswoman, Ferdoush El Abadi, who said they're doing everything they can to help.
They are here, a convoy from 3 trucks and 3 ambulances and 1 minibus with 15 of our colleagues now in Fallujah. They are now in the hospital. The American troops prevent them from disputing the medical supplies and the food and the other humanitarian supplies. Till now, the head of the convoy is negotiation with the American troops to let the Red Crescent distribute these stuff to the people who are in need to these stuff. Till now, we have no permission to distribute these stuff to the people. It is a disaster inside Fallujah. It is very serious condition. The people, there are 150 families left inside Fallujah. They need our help. They need the help of every humanitarian effort to make them live and feel like a human being.
Indeed, we're looking at pictures now of the American soldiers and the firefights and the gunfights that are going on in Fallujah and have been going on for the past few days. As for the families and the people that are still in Fallujah, what is their general day-to-day situation like? What are the actual problems they are facing?
The actual problems is the need for food, for water, for medical supplies, for blankets, for shelters, for everything, make them live in very simple way of life. This is the brief picture of what's happening inside Fallujah. Our convoy now enter inside Fallujah without guarantees, but we are now arguing the American troops to let us do our job. Till now, we have not that permission. Our colleague now wants to help the people inside Fallujah.
You say that you haven't had actual permission from the Americans, so you have no safe passage, really, through the city, yet your teams continue to go. That must be absolutely incredibly dangerous, and the bravery of the people that are working there is immense.
It is dangerous. It is danger inside Fallujah, but they saw that the hospital fully occupied by American troops, but it is full of medical equipment. There are good staff in the hospital itself, but the hospital they prevent the hospital to receive any injured people. They are negotiations now with the American troops to receive the injured people and to let us to do our work inside the hospitals, at least.
Are you hopeful that the Americans will give you more access to the hospitals and to the people in need? They are saying that they have taken most of the city. Are you hopeful in the next few hours, in the next 24 hours, that you will get more access to the people in need, thanks to the Americans?
Yes, we are. We hope we got this. We will get this permission from the American troops to receive the injured people and to distribute the supplies that we sent this morning to Fallujah.
Well, the Palestinian Prime Minister has spoken at Yasser Arafat's graveside in Ramallah. Ahmed Karai promised to continue working towards Arafat's dream of building a free and independent Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital. Later, Nabil Shah, the Palestinian Foreign Minister, told journalists the roadmap to peace continues.
Still are acting within the roadmap. The roadmap has not been changed. And the roadmap indicates that the independent Palestinian state must happen before the end of 2005. And we will dedicate all our efforts to do that. And we would like to see American support to implement the roadmap.
Well, as Palestinians continue to mourn the death of Yasser Arafat, his personal physician has called for an autopsy